I had a viewing party of your films and had a few friends in LA watch the film, like the films that you created. And one of the best things about that was that we had an audience, we had a live reaction to the creations you've made. As I was thinking about that, I realized that we don't have physical film festivals anymore. That we are missing the idea of introducing ourselves or our cinema to a live audience to get like live perspectives. Not a lot of times you'd have people leave comments on everything that they view. So before we start, maybe we should do a little film festival like introduction of
Sure.
yeah. So
Yeah.
would you like to go ahead, Priyanka?
Sure. So basically what happens, I don't know, this is my first film festival.
So you're just supposed to talk about the film, what came in your mind, what you
Okay.
wanted to show.
All right. So Limbo was created, basically it started from the conceptualization to writing to directing and editing all during the lockdown. And we pretty much did it in a span of 2-3 days because I wanted to send it to another film festival, which was specifically doing the lockdown series. So we did it under that timeline. But the idea basically came while in the first phase of the lockdown, when basically it's like everything got muted for everyone suddenly. And that's how it doesn't have any words. It has only the sounds that everybody could hear in the four walls of their houses. And somewhere down the line, everybody had these negative thoughts which were starting to pop up in everybody's mind. But at the end of the tunnel, there's always light. And that's what we wanted to show through our movie, that and how it pops with the color, basically. That this phase shall also pass, and there shall be a light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, that's what we wanted to show through the character. And the monotony, of course. So it's basically you're stuck in that limbo, right? Every day you're getting up, you're doing the same thing in your house. And yeah, so it's a limbo of things that are happening.
Okay, so for me, Lockdown Diaries came out of... so I make music videos and ads professionally. And about Feb or March, everything just came to a stop. I think once Modi announced the lockdown, everything just came to a stop. And initially it was like, oh, it's going to be 1 month. Oh, it's going to be 2 months. And of course, the projects lined up. It can't be endlessly delayed, right? But by the end of 3 or 4 months, no one had any idea, and it was endlessly delayed. And there was also a growing restlessness to do something, right? Because like I'm from Calcutta and I'm in Bombay to make films. And if I'm not making films, then what am I doing? Meanwhile, all my friends had shifted to work from home, right? So their lives were kind of continuing, but my life had just come to a halt because all productions had come to a halt. So Lockdown Diaries was born out of that. I think the urge to, at that point of time, do something, and feel like something needs to be done. As a filmmaker, if everyone is working from home, then I have to film from home, and what can I make at home? And I got in touch with a couple of friends who were also having similar thoughts, who were also creatively very blocked, not feeling very good about it. And just, as creators, I think there is always this pressure that until unless you're creating something, if you're just sitting idle for a long time, it doesn't feel good. I got in touch with a few friends. We shot a bunch of things. First, actually, this is the first time that I've worked a film in reverse, where I thought of what all can be shot first, and then thought of a narrative to suit the kind of visual imagery that I could gather. And I also do a lot of indie shoots. So I figured, where can I get some more footage? Because inside a room can get very claustrophobic as a viewer. So I had to take it out somewhere. So if I took my character on top of a terrace, where do I get a more expansive terrace shot? So I got in touch with a couple of other friends, one of who flew a drone and had a shot of Bombay lying around. And I was like, can I use it for my film? And he's like, sure. So that's how I put the entire film together. It was a bunch of people who were very frustrated with the lockdown, wanted to create something just to get out of it, stuck in the monotony of it. That was the only way that we could escape from the monotony of it. And that's how it came about. The film's in monochrome, and like the aspect ratio is 4:3, because like I've been like, while I was writing it, while I was experiencing it, the entire life just felt very cramped. I felt very cramped for space, even though I'm in the same room that I was in before the lockdown happened. But suddenly I felt very cramped for space, regardless of what time of the day it was. And so, like that, I felt the aspect ratio and the monochrome was decided like that because that's what I wanted to convey to the viewer as well. Life lost a lot of color post lockdown.
Wow. I I I do believe that we've had several um, different versions of this lockdown, within an entire year, and how it's progressively. I mean, it's amazing. It's almost like a metaphor of your mental space when you say your physical space was shrinking, and how, as creators, you're like, oh, what are you doing next? That's always the query, rather than saying, hey, I appreciate who you are for what you are, and you can just be. um Saransh, do you want to chime in and share how you felt about this proposal to be in your wife's film?
Yeah, I was at home available doing nothing. So I said I'll use my hands and legs in the movie. So I make movies. I do short films and things. So I have a production house. So during lockdown, she literally learned camera because there was nothing to do. So we had DSLR at home. So she learned like from the basic what's aperture, shutter is. And then finally she said that I have a concept in mind and I have this thing. So I did not interfere. I was like, "Theek hai, kya chahiye?" So she's like, "I just need your hands and legs are close up." I said, "Fine." And we were at home and we didn't have any equipment or anything external because we were all locked.
Mhm.
And then she only did it. She learned a bit of editing. So she learned hands-on the movie. And she learned Premiere Pro and then she edited herself, like the rough cuts. I tweaked it a little, so I took credit for it in the credits. But but most of it was hers. And, so it was really nice.
This sounds like the easiest casting ever.
Yeah. My qualification was availability, so you can't be that.
Proximity.
Availability and proximity.
Yeah. Okay, so I actually didn't want to talk about the typical questions of filmmaking. So we're going to go into the consciousness of a filmmaker. And during this time, what was brewing inside your mind to have come up with a story? Because both of you talk about the idea of the lockdown having a certain impression on our physical state of mind, our mental state of mind, and in a way, our spiritual state. How do we get along with someone? How do we share conversations with someone? Or what is our tolerance level at some point if we are sharing space with someone, especially in your case, Priyanka? Um, how do you find a way to give hope to someone through your films? And what is the stream of consciousness that allows you to do so?
So who wants? Okay. So for me, I think in the beginning of lockdown, actually, so I've been. I'll tell you where I came from. I've been in a pharma industry for a decade. So I worked as an international business development in a pharma industry, and I don't have any correlation to filmmaking or any kind of creative field as such. But then in February last year, I wanted to go on a sabbatical basically. So I wanted to take a break from what I've been doing because I always thought that I wanted to do something else or something more. And I just took a sabbatical, and from March we were in a lockdown. And so basically, the lockdown after I think a month or so, and we were with my family. We were up in North. Um, so I understood the aspects that I kind of kept back in my mind for a very long time, like how important it is to be with your family, especially in times like this, and what important role your family plays in being with you, not just physically present around you, but also emotionally. And that's what I think somewhere down the line I wanted to show through the movie as well, wherein it's character's birthday. The character has been living all alone in Mumbai for many years, maybe for work, and everybody has been doing this. I have done this for almost 8 years of my life.
Mhm.
But somewhere down the line, you knew that there was somebody for you to fall back on. and he had his mother's recipe of a shrimp burger, and that's how he celebrated his birthday and his well-being. So I think that's where I was coming from. And somewhere down the line, lockdown also showed me that life is too short to waste it in things that you might regret at the end of the day, or you might feel that, oh, you should have done something else, something better. So right time is right now. Just do whatever you want to do right now. Don't wait for, oh, the right time will come for me to write, the right time will come for me to make this. Don't wait for that. That is never going to happen. So I think that's where I was coming from.
So I think for me, it was like a lot of solitude for the first time. So this is the first time that I've been in a city for so long without traveling out. I like traveling. Usually my line of work takes me to places. Otherwise, I just like taking a break and going somewhere or just going back home. So I end up traveling quite a bit. This was the first time that I didn't get to travel for a while. And that kind of struck me as odd and like weirdly claustrophobic after a bit. And like the isolation really got to me, right? The fact that, oh my God, I'm alone with my flatmate, of course, a friend who is very close, but it's just the two of us. There's no one else, you know, it's just one person that I see, that I interact with, that I do all activities with. And that isolation really started getting to me after a while. And I saw myself change things that I would not do. I had to do. I was compelled to do, right? Because there was no one else to do it. Usually there's like some help from somewhere else. Now there's no help, right? So you are compelled to do literally every single activity, whether you're good at it or bad at it. Just suck it up and do it, you know. uh, and that made me realize that my life was changing quite a bit. You know, I had started doing things differently. I was leading my life differently to accommodate these changes that I had not thought about, some of which were positive. Subconsciously later I realized that some of which was positive. Like, for example, I had no idea how to cook. I had no idea how to cook, like, apart from an egg, or like even a basic egg, I'd like crack it and it just have to be scrambled or something like that. By the end of it, I realized either it's going to be the same thing every day, or I need to learn how to cook. So like watch YouTube videos, or like try and keep doing it till you get it right, like how you do any other activity. By the end of it, I could cook a fair amount of food to keep myself satisfied, you know, and not having the same thing over and over again. Things like this just made me realize that, okay, fine, I'm changing, and not all of it is for the worse. Like, there are some basic skills that I'm developing out of this as well. Part of which, like, I've tried to reflect through Lockdown Diaries, you know, that uh, there was obviously this overwhelming sense of despair and gloom, which I think has continued. It's not really lifted. For better or for worse, it's just like it's gone on, and now it's like a perpetual state that we are used to, and it's very unnatural, right? Because like you, as human beings, we have very animalistic tendencies where we want freedom. Like, that's one of the basic things that we want. You want to be able to step out of your house, and if someone says no, then that urge even increases even further. So even people who would not want to step out of the house, when the lockdown came in, you felt like, oh, now I want to go for a walk. I wouldn't have normally, but now I want to. You know, that freedom being taken away really hurts you. But in the process, I discovered like a bunch of skills, and I discovered some things that I really liked in the past that I had forgotten. Because life is very fast otherwise, right? This was brought to like a compulsive stop. Now you can slow down and take things as it goes. You can access memories. You can think about things that have happened. We don't get time, right? Like, usually you're working like a machine. Like, every day is the next day, every film's the next one. From it's like a continuous cycle that you're in. So this just brought things to a halt and gave time to reflect on the past, things that I enjoyed in the past, maybe going back to it. It was interesting. So I saw that there were positives that came out of it, and that's the hope that I've tried to capture in the film.
It's really interesting. As a Bombay boy, I really wish I could experience Bombay really slowed down.
It was very, it's not something that I had ever thought that I'd see Bombay like that. The last place, like, I'm from Calcutta, I wouldn't even experience Calcutta like that. So let alone Bombay.
Yeah.
It was just eerie after a point of time.
So, you know, I feel like in a collective way, we've all gone through amazing transformations together for the first time. For the first time, the world has experienced something in a synchronistic manner where it's a singular uh, experience. Like everyone's experiencing the same thing. Uh, and we've come out of it in our own way. We've grown out of it in our own way. We've adapted to it in our own way. So if you were to describe the lockdown in 4 phases, how would you do it?
I just have one point before like we go on to that. I don't think it was the same experience for everyone. You know,
Mhm.
our privilege played a large role in how we experience lockdown compared to how some other people experience lockdown. Even the particular territory, if you were in LA and I was in Bombay, there would have been a huge difference in how you experience lockdown. I had a friend in San Francisco who I was talking to all the time. Her lockdown was very different from our lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't have toilet paper running out,
Yeah.
but there were literally people outside. I saw people outside who were going crazy, like it felt like starvation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Those weren't
Absolutely.
beggars. They were daily laborers who had suddenly run out of work. You know,
Yeah.
they earn 500, 600 a day, 200, 300, whatever, and they somehow survive. They had suddenly run out of work. And they had turned to, suddenly there were crime rates being reported around Bandra, Khar, Santa Cruz. There were sudden like shops being ransacked and all of that. So I don't think the lockdown was same for all of us. Like as much as, like I can only speak for myself. I was
Mhm.
inconvenienced.
Mhm.
I have been severely inconvenienced by it, but not to the extent that it's largely affected my life.
Mhm.
I've been still able to maintain a happy, decent life compared to a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
You know, so like
Absolutely. And to your point, it's not the similar experience, but the we've all experienced something because of one common event,
Yeah.
and that has led to several experiences, and that's why we have these amazing films that have come out of the interpretations of. And you're so right. Our privilege has varied in so many levels, and that has created, for some people comfort, for a lot of people discomfort.
India,
um
India has had the largest number. India has had the largest number of increase in billionaires in the last 1 year. So there have been people who have benefited out of how the lockdown has worked. So it is not an
Absolutely.
equal comparison.
Yeah, it's the dichotomy of India is probably the most shocking that I've ever experienced. You see the worst of anything, and then you see the best of everything, and you're like, wait, we're living in this massive spectrum. And I feel like as an artist, you can actually draw upon that so conveniently. So yeah, let's talk about drawing inspiration from that spectrum of extremes and how we live in dichotomous states.
I think it's a very strange time to be in as a creator, you know, in India.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause what you see and what you can project and what you're allowed to speak, not all of them are aligned. So
Yeah, I think we kind of agree with Rajdip. Yeah, it is, but it's a fact, right?
I'm working on a script and I don't know what is not controversial anymore or what is acceptable anymore. And that's so many walls around you before you even start on a piece of paper. So,
correct, right? Like where do you go as a creator?
Mm.
So I like during this lockdown, I also wrote another short film script, okay, which is like a longer script based out of somewhere, but it's based on an event that happened during the lockdown, which was reported in the news, and it's like a fictional version of the event. And that went to like like that won an award somewhere at a screenwriting competition, and I've been trying to get it funded. But it's really, really difficult because it does not portray the lockdown in positive light.
Mm.
But was the lockdown really in positive light?
That's your elevator pitch, Rajdeep. That's your one log line. You get funding no matter what.
No, I think it's very strange, you know, because there are some things that creators want to say, but there are also things that you also want to be able to create more, right? It's
Yeah.
not as if you want to create something and then get beaten up on the street and all of that, and your film getting chucked out. No one wants that. But it's also very strange times because cinema has always spoken truth to power, you know. But right now, that space of cinema has been silenced, or it's been, at least there's a definite attempt to silence it.
I I agree with you, and it's been a narrative for almost a century now, where and not just in India, but different places of the world. You know, Iranian filmmakers, I know so many of them who are pretty much put behind the bars for speaking up or sharing a story. Um, and I see that more and more so in India now, where it's sort of regressive, where we thought we were really advanced and we were all about free speech and it's a free nation, but there is a lot of regression. And I do think that there is that temptation of, oh, now you have YouTube and other platforms like Vimeo where you can be, you know, film of the week, or people can celebrate you over the internet. So how often are you tempted to do something where you feel like, oh, ये तो कोई नहीं बनाएगा, मैं ही बना सकता हूँ, लेकिन बनाना तो चाहिए. I mean, we have to make what we really want to, right, Rajdip? Like eventually you will end up making this film.
Yeah, definitely. I'm still figuring out how to make it. No matter how, see, at the end of the day, if you have a script which you believe in, you will figure out a way to make it.
Absolutely.
That, like, as an independent filmmaker, that's how I go about with my indie films, because who else will make it, right? That's so I come from like a law school background where I started making films while in law school, and then I was a lawyer for a bit, and but I just like wanted to make films full time. And while I was in law school, like that was my attitude when I started off, that I was up against media and film students, so might as well just go for it and make it, and then let's see what happens out of it. And it's worked
I
for me
want to
so
see the
far.
film that you make from that script. I'm really looking forward to it.
I hope to be able to show you that.
Yeah.
I see a common tangent between the two of you. You both have come from analytical spaces, working in pharmacy and law, and now you're finding your expressionism in creativity and storytelling. Priyanka, why don't you tell us what led you into this? I know you explained this in your introduction, but we want to dive deep into what made you come out of a cushy pharmaceutical company job to, you know, struggles of storytelling and freedom of being an artist.
So I think I've always enjoyed stories, basically. So I read a lot of fiction, non-fiction. Because I did not have any kind of studies in filmmaking or any kind of creative side. So I never thought that I could do that. And I never knew the nitty-gritties of it as such. But I always liked when a story was being told. So if you see every single day, I think it's basically a story. Every single day is a story, right? When you're talking to your friends also, it's a story. And the way it is narrated is what gets the listener to whether listen to you or just ignore you, right? So that really matters. And with internet especially coming in the forefront, the audio-visual medium has really taken at par basically a lot of strength, and it has given voice to a lot of people. Well, not stating whatever has been happening. So, but yes, it is a very strong medium. And when I met Saransh, he has been in this field. So I got involved in a few of the films, and
She didn't get involved. I convinced her to pay money for one of my movies. I did not get a producer. Like
because I had a full-time job.
She had a full-time job, so I convinced her like this is the script, and the movie was about a crazy girl talking to a fridge. So I had this weird idea. I knew no one would put their money into this, so I like sued her in, and then we got the movie made also.
Yeah. So I think that's where we are also co-writing a few scripts right now. So I think that's where I got interested in it. And as he said, I learned the camera and everything during the lockdown. So yeah, I think that's what. So that's where that's how I thought of getting into this.
Rajdip, who broke the shackles of law.
I was very fascinated by cinema from day one. Like, and like just growing up in Calcutta in a Bengali middle class family, you never, like, we were just told that that's not possible. You know, you have to become like, there are three real professions. You can become a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You can try and become something else, but film and all is out of the question. But I
Mm-hmm.
just found the entire process very fascinating. The fact that I found theater fascinating and stories fascinating and music fascinating, but film was one place where everything came together. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, how does that happen? That is crazy. That is insane. How does that even happen? And the more I got into it, like initially it was indie, so I was very inspired. I was looking at filmmakers like Kashyap, Q, Hemant Gaba, uh, people who had done super indie stuff to figure out how they had gone about telling their films, because I wasn't interested in like Bollywood and like mainstream Bollywood.
Mm-hmm.
It was my cup of tea. So I was like, how do these guys make the films? DSLR filmmaking was just picking up. So we bought a DSLR and we started shooting with it. Me, a friend of mine, a couple of people just. I was also mixing around with a lot of people, and everyone had different interests. So 2, 3 people came together and said, "Okay, we can do this together." You know, everyone had different skills. We were like, "Okay, like, we can give this a shot." And before we knew it, we had a couple of films out, and they had gone to festivals, and we were thinking of how to do it full time. And then I tried to do law full time for a bit, but that was disastrous. Like, it was very hectic and not my scene. And I wanted to do film full time, and I realized that I had to make that shift at some point of time. And and ever since I made that shift, I think like I've just been like really happy as a person, because the entire process of creation is so fulfilling and it's so satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Not always on client mandated projects where you have to do things a certain way, but
Mm-hmm.
just the just the joy of being part of the process. It's so gratifying, and you feel like, wow, it's such a crazy world, right? When you go recce a place, there's nothing in it. You literally build it up from scratch. You put the characters there, you put the characters in costume, they speak a certain way, you write the dialogues, and you create something out of nothing. It's like magic. And I just find that process very fascinating. So that's how I got into film, and that's how I fell in love with films, I guess. I still watch a lot of films. I write a lot on films. I run an Instagram page where I write about films. It just keeps me really happy.
You seem very happy. I'm also happy that uh, law lost one, but the film world gained Rajdip Ray.
So I just have a question for you. When you
Yeah.
showed this to the audience in LA, my
Mm-hmm.
film did not have subtitles. My films always do have subtitles, but
Mm-hmm.
because this was like a poetic film, when I tried to subtitle it, and Hindi not being my primary language, I thought the subtitles lost the context of the words.
Mm-hmm.
How did the audience in LA understand it?
Yeah, because your film is accompanied with such strong visuals, and even though it's a different backdrop, for a lot of people who had never been to India or never traveled to Mumbai, it did convey the idea of those emotions that are trapped inside this body, which is trapped inside this place, which is trapped inside this phenomena. And in a way, um, you're right, like, because I tried to translate it, you know to explain, because there were some moments where I was really tempted to share what was going on, because there's something very poetic about the way you've done it against a monochromatic scene, and it doesn't really translate. It's also because English is not the most sophisticated language, you know Bengali, Hindi, like, our emotions are very fluid, in the Eastern world. In the Western world, its emotions are supposed to be contained in a container, and then you like just flow through those containers, and you tick mark those containers.
I just think translating poetry is very hard. So like subtitling generally is not that difficult when it's dialogues, but
Yeah,
poetry needs to have context and emotion, which is very hard, which gets lost in translation very often.
I definitely agree with you. It's been interesting to even like uh, see filmmakers from India now show a lot of their work, because I've kind of not been watching a lot of films, and the kind of mainstream films that you get are not that appealing to my psyche right now. Um, but at any point that you were to say, hey, this is what I want to make, no matter what language, what film, let's try to do a one liner or an elevator pitch of what you'd like to make next.
Okay, fine. So I have been thinking of something. Um, so this story I heard from my mother-in-law actually. I think this is something which had happened, like they have seen this while growing up. So they are from Mumbai, but I'm from Punjab. So they know more Mumbai than me, of course.
Mhm.
This is about an old lady who used to live on the streets. And I think you also know about this, right? Yeah. So she used to live on the streets. And she used to make this most amazing brinjal masala. So it's like bengan ki sabzi in Hindi.
Bengan
Right?
ka bharta.
Yeah, no, not exactly bengan ka bharta, but in the Maharashtrian style, it's a bengan ki sabzi, one kind of. But
Mhm.
she used to make it so amazing, and she used to live on the street. She didn't have like a full-fledged stall also. She used to basically make it on the street, but it used to smell so good that the smell traveled across streets.
And I've smelled her food while going to school as a kid. It used to smell so yummy, and it used to be on street with her stove on the street and pan being there.
So people just used to come and she used to wrap it in whatever she could get hands on, and she used to give it to people, and that's how she earned. And through that, over the years, she has been able to make like a little hut for herself, for her family, and that's how like she has been there forever. So I wanted to narrate a story around her life, and basically I wanted to see the life through her eyes. I know I probably can't, but I wanted to know a little more about that, how she survived, what she did in her life, and if what happened to her post lockdown, basically post pandemic. And so I was weaving a story around that, and how something as small as a sabzi, as small as like a vegetable, can impact in somebody's life. So I had this idea of how it would impact an autistic kid. So that is something I've been thinking about.
Yeah, it's very in time with everything that is happening with the farmers as well, which is not in the best light, especially how long it's been going on. Rajdip, what's
Better
your
than
next?
explaining that, can I just read out a bit? Can I just read out a log line which I've written, because I feel that it's just more formatted, better formatted. So the log line is that amidst the ongoing coronavirus imposed lockdown, a surge towards the digital India, a farmer in the mountains of Himachal Pradesh decides to do whatever it takes to ensure his son's education is not hampered. Okay, the film is called Zoom Class. It's about how Zoom Class became such a big aspect of our lives, right, out of nowhere. And the stories about this family which stays in Himachal Pradesh. The guy's a poor farmer who's on top, and suddenly his son's classes get stopped after he has a firstborn. The firstborn dies, and he vows to make his secondborn like a big person and send him to the city and all of that, and give him an education. But suddenly the coronavirus hits and there's lockdown, and all the things shift to a digital thing. And at the same point of time, there are speeches which are being given which says that there's great digitalization of India which is happening and all of that. But this person finds it very difficult to get a device for his son. So at that point of time, he's also left with very little money, because transporting crops became very difficult with the lockdown coming in and transport getting stopped. Uh, so yeah, the farmer's left with what choice he has to make in order to find a mobile phone with an internet connection. So that's his big motivation, that he has to go around trying to find a mobile phone with an internet connection, because otherwise his son will have to give up his education. Yeah,
That's phenomenal. I'm in it. I love it. This is great.
should we make a poet?
Yeah, well, this is a manifestation session where we really put out what we really want to make, what innate desires, and the universe will provide us with all that we need. So going back to how we can describe the lockdown in 4 phases, because it's almost like a season of lockdown, right? Like it's been a year now, and it feels like it's going to be longer. We thought it was going to be 2 weeks, 2 months, and then suddenly it's like, wow, a whole year has passed. It's like we're celebrating COVID anniversaries now.
Never thought of
So, huh?
Never thought of that.
Right? So how do we just how does one go about experiencing lockdown in Priyanka's life and Rajdip's life and Saransh's life? Let's tap into that.
So this lockdown was pretty nice because, as she said, we were stuck with her parents. And her place is on the border of Punjab Himachal border, so we could see mountains, and the house is pretty big that way. So we and since we were there as their guests, so we didn't really go through anything that our friends went through here, like standing in the queues or minor inconveniences that the so-called polished life was getting affected. We didn't face that. So for us, it was 3 month long party. So all were at home, we were playing games, watching TV, looking at news, counting numbers of cases that are there in Bombay and things like that. So it went like that. But once we came here from, we drove from Punjab to Bombay in that time during the lockdown with e-pass and things like that. So once we came here, then the reality hit us. And the people in our society in Andheri, like Bombay, they were all in sync with the lockdown thing, but it was very new for us. It was already like 4 months past lockdown, so they knew what they're doing, but it was still new for us to wash things, to sanitize everything and things, because there we were pampered like anything. And so yeah, that's when we came here and nothing was moving at all for us. It happened to us like 4 months after it happened to everyone. And our friends had moved on and things like that. And that's when she came up with like movie concept, let's make something to like move our heads a little. And so yeah, so that happened. And then now we are pretty much used to it. So Andheri became claustrophobic. Bombay started becoming claustrophobic because you couldn't go down and it's really crowded and things. So we took this decision of moving to New Bombay, where it's less crowded and we could see mountains and things from our place. So we went away from Bombay. It's like a long drive to a meeting now. It's almost an hour and a half to a meeting. But it's all worth it now. Because lockdown taught me one thing, that it's very important to have physical space. Because we were locked down at her place, she has like a bungalow there. So we had like a private terrace. We were playing badminton in the evening and things like that. We were mentally very sane. But the moment we came to Bombay in our 1 BHK house, it really hit us. Like you can't go out and air or breathing is so important. So then that's when we decided like, let's prioritize things. We could go for walks here and we could just be sane here, it seems. So that was my lockdown.
For me, I think personally in my head, lockdown was in phases actually. Because the moment I left my job, for the first time in my life, I had a break. I had a break from the system, basically. Otherwise, right from school, you're in a system and you know what step to take next. But for the first time in my life, I was not in a system. I was left free to do whatever you want to do. And in the beginning, yes, I was kind of all over the place because I did not know what to do. When you're not, so sometimes because of the way we are led, we lead our lives, we do not know what to do when we are actually left to be on our own, right? And you take some time to figure it out. And I think that was my beginning phase at times. But because we were with the family and everything, so it was still easier. But once we came back to Mumbai, I think it really hit upon me that, okay, I'm not doing anything right now with my life. And if this continues, I don't want to be in a zone where I've not done anything for a long time. And I've always wanted to create. So I was not painting, I was not reading, I was not literally not doing anything. So I think from being to, okay, I want to do something, I was going into a phase of kind of like self-questioning, self-doubt, and whether I will be able to do anything with the decision that I've taken. Nobody forced me to do anything, like to just leave my job. I was pretty comfortable. I was doing well for myself. So after that phase went, after we started, like I started learning basically. Basically, what helped me was learning. I learned things that he has been doing. I started learning painting online. I started learning how to write. So basically, I was learning everything that I wanted to always, but I've never been doing that. And then slowly and steadily now, I think I'm doing other things. I've started earning on my own. So yeah, I think that's how I grew as a person in this lockdown.
She's a full-time editor now. She edits for us. And she conducted she was a production head for one of my shoots also. So she did a brilliant photo shoot. And she worked like amazing. So it was fun to see that transition.
So yeah, the 1 year was a phase of transition.
And her life was really nice because she was an international business. So she could travel to Europe in every 2 months. And when she was in UK, I used to go to Uttarakhand just to feel good about myself. And so that was her life. And from that, when she was conducting photo shoots in like bright sun, it was really nice to see.
I think for me, the first phase of lockdown. So I'm a freelance director, right? So there are some days that I go shoot, and there are some days that I just sit at home and write and do other things, which not a lot of people, like you guys are in the industry, so you get it. But not other people. Other people don't get that lifestyle, right? They're like, "What is this? How does this happen?"
I didn't get
the first
in 2018. If you would have asked me, I didn't get it either.
Most of the people around me still don't get it. So the first few days was watching people who had a real job around me stop their work and they started panicking. And for me, nothing had changed. So I was like, okay, fine. Why is this a problem? I can't go out. I anyway don't go out for 10 days. It's school. I have to order things in. That changes nothing. I'll order things in. Sure, there has to be some added levels of protection. That doesn't seem to be that bad a problem. Then the second phase was when I saw that they were also going crazy, and even I was going crazy, saying, okay, now time for me to get out. Okay, I've had enough. But that was the second phase. That I think was the hardest phase, which like really hit when you realize, oh man, I can't even take a flight. Screw a flight. I can't even go out to a pub and have a beer if I want. That's not done. And things were so uncertain, right? Everything, like for the first time, we face so much uncertainty. Like as human beings, I think we keep prepping for at least like the next day, or the next month or the next year, thinking that this is what I want to do. And all of that just came to a standstill, and everyone was faced with that uncertainty, big or small, rich or poor, everyone had that uncertainty. So that was the second phase, which was like overwhelmingly dark and negative, and that's where a lot of the thoughts that led to Lockdown Diaries came to, which was the third phase, when I realized, okay, all of it is not bad. You see, there are positives coming out of it. You're gaining life skills out of it, for example. I also realized that staying at home meant a super sedentary lifestyle, which can get very physically taxing. And that's not a good lifestyle to have. So I started taking like CrossFit at home pretty seriously. And that was a better journey for me. I didn't know that I could get that fit at home, not doing a lot. And I was like, oh, cool. This is not that bad. So that was the third phase where some positives started coming out of it. And now is the fourth phase where, well, it's an impending sense of gloom that we've gotten used to. Technically, that lockdown phase has been over, if you've noticed. But people still don't go out. That uncertainty that was placed 1 year back has still not gone away. So you don't really know whether it's a lockdown. Your mind's gone into a state of stagnancy, basically. There's a constant source of fear or paranoia. Someone directly who's fallen ill. So I think those would be the 4 stages for me. Like this, unfortunately, is the longest, but it's also the most hopeless state, until unless everyone gets vaccinated. But it's great that the vaccinations have started. So,
Rajdip, I want to share something. Can I share it with you?
Yeah, sure.
Welcome to 2021. Here, less is more. Growth isn't optional. Authenticity is crucial. Love is unconditional. 2020, a year where tenacity, persistence, and patience came to play. A year where physical challenges led to emotional, mental, and spiritual growth. A year where expansion was the only choice if you decided to honor your flow. A year where sharing and giving became the tools of healing. A year where shedding was a long ceremony and bearing your heart was not a short journey. A year where gratitude became the navigator. A year where grounding and curating energetic space became a spell. A year where we saw reflections of ourselves in every other being around the planet. a year where we started living more consciously and breathing more deeply, a year where the love of animals and Mother Nature was finally seen and recognized, a year when we decided to become no more than who we truly are.
So
So,
much truth in those words. Is that something that you've written?
yeah,
That's really nice.
it came out of that state of hopelessness, but I think we move so fluidly between positive and negative because that's how we are built, as conductors of electricity as well. We're like, oh, at one point we're this, or one point we're that. But I think being centered has been such a finding your center has been such a struggle for a lot of people. If you can briefly describe how you're doing this, how are you trying to find your center?
So to be honest, I was reading this article a few days back which said that how the lockdown has permanently affected human brains. How the last 1 year, and this is true for every single person. So you'll probably notice it in ways that you will notice it for yourself. I'll notice it in my ways. I've noticed my behavior change. And I've noticed some other people who I'm close to, their behavior change, fundamentally change, right? And that has been something which is out of our control because as human beings, we've evolved in such a way that we have like a fight or flight tactic. And like when we get scared, we react in a certain way and our brain reacts to that. So I think that way, I also read another article which said that mental health problems are at an all-time high, because of the last 1 year. Everyone in some way, people who were perfectly fine before have become anxious. They have this this overwhelming sense of doom has gotten them depressed. People are not happy about not being able to go out and lead their regular lives. So I think fundamentally people and people's brain structures have changed a lot. I think mine has as well. I can't judge for myself whether it's positive or negative, but it has. Sometimes I do get angry or sometimes I do get upset saying that, what, why is it like this? This is not supposed to be like this, right? Like, why this could have happened 20 years later or 20 years back? Why now? Why during my time? But at the same point of time, I think with major things like this, which really challenge the human spirit, like all kinds of art, a lot of art can come out of it, through these situations that challenge the human spirit, whether that's on an individual level or on a collective level. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. That's how I try and make sense out of it. And also, like, I try to not take things that seriously. I try to detach myself from it, and I keep telling myself, like, if this is the worst and if this is rock bottom, like the only way forward is up. So so that was like peak lockdown, and things have improved. Things will possibly improve. Will it ever go back to the same? We don't know. But are we gone? As human beings, we'll try and make the best out of each situation, right?
Yeah.
In whatever context we are in, as filmmakers, this is the best that we can do. We'll go ahead and try and do it.
How are you finding your centeredness?
So usually for me, I like to travel like every creative person. So it just keeps me sane. So I can take I work a lot with corporates. I work a lot with left brain people who don't really understand creativity or respect it the way you expect it to be respected. So I can take all that once I'm like recharged. And lockdown played with me because it just stopped my recharging thing. I can't travel anymore. So I used to go to mountains a lot and just feel at peace for a month or so, then come back and work with the city's noise. But now I can't do that. So now I'm trying to find like things in little things. Like if I make good breakfast, it motivates me. If I learn a thing or two, then it motivates me. So I'm just trying to make sense of like little things. Like we got a television and we're feeling like as excited as people in 90s. Ki ghar mein TV aa gayi. So I'm really finding happiness in very tiny things of life. So that's what is the new thing that has been working for me, because I've been living this life for almost like 12, 15 years now, where if I get frustrated, I just travel for a month or so and I'm like perfectly fine. I can deal with anything. But
I feel you. I have the same life.
Yeah. And now it's very different. It's a very different experience. So I think, yeah, I'm learning through doing like one thing at a time. That thing is working. I didn't. I was jobless after a really long time. I didn't have work during lockdown, as most of the people were out of work. So I wasn't working for like 3-4 months.
Mhm.
So I got some time for myself, and yeah, I learned some skills. I love to cook. It calms me down. So I made the burger in the movie, by the way. It's actually done by baking the bread and
including
everything,
the bread.
including the bread
Yeah.
and everything. So
And it was
Well
good.
done.
it
Well
was
done.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you see how smart the director is. The cook, the actor.
So yeah,
Let
so
me
I'm
exploit all your talents.
learning and trying to cope up with it. I don't think I have found a way to like find my center as of now, the new one. But I'm finding it in little things as of now.
That is actually one of the sweetest things I've heard in recent times. To find joy in the smallest things is it's so sweet and such an underrated thing. Like people don't share about this. So thank you so much because you know I've said it like we put like a band-aid on our zakhams and say acha ye ho jayega to chalo theek hai. We always say acha if I take this trip then the rest of the year I'll somehow manage.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
somewhere lockdown did play a role in it because life became uncertain, and I started understanding it more that now is everything. This is all I have, and it's not bad. So
Hmm.
it's very difficult to put in words, but it made me value present more. Like this moment is mine, and whatever has happened is mine. I don't know what future holds. So this worked for me. So the smaller things I'm enjoying it.
Priyanka, does the positive effects belong to you?
Yeah, it does actually. And I think where he's coming from, I can completely understand. It's like being a child again. So, and I think especially the people who are in the cities all over the world, I think we run so much that we forget that. Plus, it's not that we want to forget it, it's just that we can't remember it anymore because of our life, because everything is so fast paced. And yeah, I think being a child again really helps. Um, for me, I think it has always been, for me actually, lockdown and my personal changes just happened so parallelly that I can't distinct them. For me, I've always liked the smell of a paper and a pen. And I was so far away from it because everything is computerized now. So that's I think where I go to. I like my isolation for some hours in a day. I like that I just sit across with either a book with some words written on it or with a paper, plain paper, and I write some words on it. So I think that's where I'm spending my most time.
Now that I'm thinking, oh wow, we've had a really nice, profound hour-long conversation, and I'm so thankful. I'm so grateful for this conversation. It's also nice to talk to people who are experiencing Mumbai because I'm viscerally living through your experiences right now. So one of the questions would be, what are you seeking in your audience?
That if you don't like something, it's okay that they don't like it. It doesn't mean that it's wrong or to be banned. So there's so many things like I don't like red color, I don't ban it. So it's just acceptability of whatever is happening is happening. It happened from somebody else's mind. It's not going to affect your life in any way. It's just a figment of like for the movies. It's just an imagination of someone. Don't like it, don't like it. You like it, you appreciate it. Just don't ban content. Is what I am really getting at.
Yeah, I'd want empathy from the audience for the film, for the filmmaker, for people around them, because I just feel like empathy is lacking. People are just becoming very self-centered and just thinking of themselves, and there are rules being put into place that not everyone had agreed to, and that is making the empathy diminish even further. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I'm looking for is acceptability, because just accept that every content, every person is different, and different doesn't mean wrong. So yeah, I think acceptability is something that can bring good to everyone.
Beautiful. What is hope? What is hope to you?
Hope is the fact, hope is the feeling that tomorrow will be better. That's the ultimate thing that human beings wish for, right? That's why you work so hard, so that tomorrow is a better day.
I think it's more like a fuel to get going, to keep us going. So if there is no hope, there what's the point of anything?
And I think hope is to see positive in things, positivity in things. If in the spectrum of negative to positive, I think we all should bend towards the positive nature of everything. That's a hope.
What is something that you would want to share with the future generations, probably 50 years from now?
Conserve nature. Because in the lockdown, that's what we saw. Conserve nature and food, I think. Those are the most important things that I thought were the most important. Conserve your planet.
Yeah, I'm very confused. Saransh, you go first.
I was about to say conserve. She stole my answer. I'm blank right now.
What would you want to leave 50 years later? Things are very messed up as it is right now. Like as Priyanka said, unless we fix the environment, 50
I
years
have
people
hope
look
that 50 years later we would live a better life, because I always see the world moving in a circle. So it will fall down and then it will start rising from there. So maybe 50 years from now, we might not be in the state that we are right now, and grass could be greener. I don't know.
But yeah, if we make the correct choices, like India is a country where a vast number of people are under 30. You know, more than 70% of our population, I think, is under 30. So if the youth and I've noticed that young people are different, right? It's just that old people are still making the rules. So the minute we get to kick those old people out and start making the rules, maybe things are gonna start changing. Because old people haven't ever changed anything for the better, ever. They have stuck on to their old rules, and old hasn't ever benefited anyone. So
take the reins
we
for the young people, I think.
like we also live in a country where there were political parties who tried to ban the internet when it came about. You know, they said computers are bad. You know, that was an argument that happened in the 90s. Let's not bring in computers. It's going to take away labor. So until and unless younger people step into policy and start making decisions, that's not going to change. And that is the need of the hour, I feel. You know, that everyone, like our films have to reflect what we believe in overall in terms of life and politics and ideology. And people have to bring that up in whatever career that they are doing it in. And that has to reflect, like the ethics have to be right. The ethics have to be fixed, and that's missing right now.
That reminds me of talking about utopia. What is an ideal utopian world in a sentence?
For me, an ideal utopian world, should I go?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Is one where everyone is equal, okay, and I get to make films every day. So that's my idea of utopia.
Yeah, maybe visa-free travel. So people can be wherever they want and choose the kind of setting that suits them, and just travel anywhere and set anywhere where they want. It's a very crazy idea. It's not organized as such, but might lead to problems, but we can deal with them in the utopian world.
I think for me, 2 sentences. One would be to live in harmony. I mean, everybody says this, as I said, conserve. So live in harmony with nature. And second, to accept, again, acceptability to different people, different needs, different characters.
Correct. Like just reduce inequality and discrimination, I guess. Like we've just grown so used to it. And after a point of time, it hurts. But as an individual, you aren't in a position to change it, you know? And that's even more frustrating. You want to do something, but you can't. What are you going to do? You're going to feed one poor person like a million behind.
As a collective consciousness, you think we're all one living, breathing entity with like several different unique personalities?
Yes.
Yes.
I think we are very different entities. We are one entity. I know that I'm very different from some other entities. So based on that, I'm going to say that we are all different entities who come together for very selfish purposes of survival.
No, we're not all equal. We're not all, but what I mean is one big entity as one living organism as a planet with different unique individuals.
It's just that with overall, yeah, but like you see, man is the first animal who has been so selfish. As Priyanka mentioned, like we are the ones who have destroyed the environment. No other animal has been able to do that.
Yeah.
And even man has been able to do that in the last 200 years. We've been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't managed to do anything. In the last 100 years, we managed to mess things up royally. So I think, are we really like modern man? I really think modern man has to reflect whether we are in one with the universe or not, because does not look like we are.
And that inquiry is where we'll find the solutions, right? Like, because the ones who have destroyed, as you say, are the ones who have the key, or the way to reminisce about the past, to plan a future, and to actually work in the now collectively. And as much as we have been a part of that problem, we are also that solution, and that query leads us into that space of self-inquiry, um, and finding creative ways to narrate that without creating a divide. Because if we don't find our centeredness, if we don't all meet at the same place, we can't say, yaar, tum galat ho, main sahi hu, right? We have to meet somewhere in the middle and say, all right, we got to resolve this. And how do we create films that pass on that message? I've had a tremendous journey personally, and every time I reflect back, especially through conversations like these, it reminds me of where I come from, and it also reminds me that anything is possible, because I'm a living embodiment of that. And everything that we put our mind to, we are completely capable of, as long as it's positive and leave a good footprint behind, so that people can emulate, or compare at least.
Correct. I think that's the point of art, right? Like even right now, we go back to films made in the 90s, made in the 60s, whether it's like Jafar Panahi's film or Satyajit Ray's film. Why do you go back to it?
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain element of truth that is reflected, which is valid, even if it is viewed 50 years later. That is why you also go back to hear like a Bach, or you go back to a Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, because there's truth in that music, And we also live in a very fast age of content, where people have to make stuff within 15 seconds and let it go. Every art, there has to be new content. So it's film versus content. But as filmmakers, I think we need to have that consciousness that, in some way, whatever we create has to have some social responsibility, or should at least attempt to have. Whether we succeed or whether we fail, it's a process. You can't really be sure whether you'll succeed, but at least that intent needs to be there from the filmmaker's part or from the creator's part. I think, right, like right now it's an interesting part. There's a lot of oppression, but through that oppression there's a lot of stuff which is going to come out, because that's always the case.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting time to be a creator in any field, whether you're an artist, a writer, a filmmaker, a musician. There's a lot of anger and hate and repression that will at some point of time break through the different mediums, which we are seeing right now in India through hip hop. Indian hip hop is coming out from the streets. Who are these people? These people have not been given jobs. They have been relegated to second category citizens, and suddenly they have found expression in hip hop. So like Gully Boy legitimized it, but that's been happening for a while.
Yeah,
like
the underground the hip hop movement has been,
like, not even Divine and Nazy. There are other people who've been doing it for years. So now it's just exploding, where people have realized, oh wow, this is where I can vent, and it's coming out. It's coming out as graffiti on the streets. So yeah, I think that's.
You said something very important, because I find myself going back to Fellini or Kurosawa or Satyajit Ray's movies, because like, why do we watch films from a time capsule rather than watching something current? Because I think back then we weren't consuming so much information. I think within the moment a person gets up in the morning till noon, they have consumed 10 times more information than our grandfathers did within a year. Absolutely. And that in itself is an emotional overload. So how are we doing something that like really condenses our experiences in one, like, actually, can I do a question, because I feel like that could be a really important thing in the edit. um More and more people now, especially because of the advent of content on mobile phones, are losing retention period. So a lot of attention deficit syndromes going around. What would you say to that audience, or how would you? I know that filmmaking in itself is such an art of, like, you go into a cinema in the darkness, and then you really immerse yourself into an environment that is not disturbed by anything else but just the film. What would you say about the retention period, and how would you say this is the way to move forward?
Can I begin? So why I want to begin is because this is the first short film that I ever made. So I would call myself just an amateur. So I would like to comment it from the audience perspective, because I am the person who's looking at all the content. So I
Mhm.
think what I would like to say is, when somebody's making something, they're actually putting their heart into it. And I've seen some of my friends and him, a lot of people do it. A lot of people on the cinema also, right? And every person, right from crew, right from every single person, they're putting their life, their heart, their mind, everything into it. So you have to look at the content, what is coming out. You can't just be looking at everything, and so there's this brain, right? If it consumes everything that is invaluable, there's the space to consume something which is valuable. So I think the content, the subject, matters, and yeah, I think as an audience also we have that responsibility towards ourselves, right? What we are giving importance to.
Is a challenge, especially now where everything's like just a click away, and if you're not grabbing the attention in first, like whatever 15 minutes or something, audiences just move on. But sometimes you miss on very, very uh, meaningful stuff because of not having patience. Like some of the movies, they really are slow in the beginning, but they would blow your mind off once like it reaches its peak. So
Mhm.
I think it's important for the audiences also to have that patience which it did. And OTT is making it difficult accordingly. Because the moment you start feeling a little bored, you just switch the movie or something. Theaters was a better experience. But the retention, I think theater is the only way to go. Because audiences already paid the money, so they'll not leave until like the movie is really bad. So they would sit on the chair and like go through it. So, but OTT, I think then the makers will have to change their ways of making just to get the retention of the audiences. And now, I would like to add this thing that because of the analytics and the number, the creative people have been quantified. That you have so many views, or the retention of the audience was for this minute on your stuff, which makes you a better person than someone who has lost retention. You can't really weigh creativity against numbers, and that
Mhm.
is what the retention that is representing figures is kind of bothering to creativity is what I feel.
Mm.
Like, because I tell people that I'm a photographer, they ask me Instagram pe how many followers do you have, and I have 800 followers, and that has nothing to do with my photography. I'm just bad with social media. I
Mhm.
feel it very tedious to be on social media and upload. Media wants to, but that's how clients are treat you. Like that's how people judge you. So the numbers
Mm.
to creativity is not very nice thing to happen. I don't know whether it was in context or not. I just went that way.
That's okay. I want to know what's going on in the cerebral side of Rajdeep.
No, I think like we are competing against content, right? And that's like it's an unfair comparison for the film world. But we also live in a very democratic time of filmmaking. Earlier on, you needed to have come from a certain background and have like huge financial resources to be able to even think that you'll be able make a film. Right now, if you have an idea, you can go and make it on a phone.
Mhm.
So times are very different and the challenges are very different. And we are competing against content. But like I'd like to believe that cinema has something very deep that content doesn't. You know, the joy, the satisfaction, the roller coaster range of emotions that you can experience through cinema. is not something that content, short form content like reels and thing offer. They offer more instant gratification than what
Mm.
cinema can change you as a person if you watch the right films.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think cinema as a medium will lose its relevance. I don't think theaters will survive because now people have gotten used to watching on other devices. So they're also more scared. So people won't go out. So that's why like OTT and all will take over. Sure, the landscape of cinema will change. The landscape
Mm-hmm.
of everything is changing. But like that's also where I find hope because I see things will be made very differently from now on.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the last 10 years I hadn't experimented so much with mobile phone filmmaking, you know.
Yeah.
This time I did. I was like, okay, I have an iPhone at home, I'm going to shoot it on that, I'm going to match it with drone footage and some other footage. So I think maybe like, so the black and white aesthetic also came in handy over there, so that covers up all the footage without having a professional creator. What is this? A filmmaker will find ways to create given the constraints that are there,
Yeah.
you know.
Even your
So
format, like I felt like you tapped into. I think while I was watching your film, I was like, uh, this guy probably chose the format is really unique. One, and two, the length is short. That you're like, okay, it's impactful. You know, you get in and out of it real quick, but it leaves you with something after. And
yeah,
that's why, like, I was like, okay, maybe what inspired him to make a film that is under this like 2 minutes
I
of.
love reading short stories as much as I love reading novels. Okay, I just think that they are different formats. Like I like reading poetry, but I also like haiku. You know,
Mhm.
it tastes of something, but leaves you with like you don't know, like figure out the rest of it. You know, it leaves you thinking. I like different formats, I'd say, of consuming content. So that's where like my fascination with telling stories comes. I've told stories which are 20 minutes long or 30 minutes long, or been part of long format content. But like short format content, I just feel you can convey so much. You know, the time, and first of all, time is very precious right now.
Mhm.
Time is money, and people value their time a lot. So if you're going to ask for someone's time, make sure that it's worth it. Some senior filmmaker told me this while I was starting out a long time back, that ensure that your film is only as much as it needs to be, not as long as you want it to be.
Mhm.
So that's something like brevity in filmmaking. I think for a lot of things that I watch, I feel like, why this could have been shorter. This
Mhm.
would have been nice had it been shorter. Why is it stretched to 2 hours, you know?
Yeah.
But again, there are formats and there are distributors and there's a system in which it works. As an indie filmmaker, I don't have to care about that system. I
Mhm.
make my own way. So I will make it my way. If it has to be 15 minutes, it'll be 15. This was particularly 1.5 because it captured everything that I had to in 1.5. As I said,
Mhm.
like I also thought of what all things I could capture around me. So it was working backwards to make a film. That
Yeah.
these are the elements I can capture inside my house. This is the narrative that I can build. And this is what I want the narrative to bring out by the end of it.
Hmm. After having talked to all three of you, I truly believe that you are on the path of doing what you want to do. And I'm so glad that you've used this time to be inspired and create something that will inspire others. And um, before we end this conversation, I would like you to leave one leaving note, and maybe if you want to thank Bandra Film Festival for putting some eyeballs on your content. Priyanka, would you like to go first?
Sure. This is my first film and one of the first screening. So I'm really thankful to Banner Film Festival and Priyanka Dhanjal and to you for taking your time out. And of course, now the Banner Film Festival platform is so good, and we are watching all the good films, movies that are made. So really thankful to them.
So I've been a part of a couple of film festivals where I've directed my movies and they've been part of them. But they've always been in theaters and things. This is my first virtual film festival as such. And the maximum audience that any of my film previously has got is like 500 or maximum 1000 if it's been screened twice. But this is insane. The number of audiences that have seen the movie. Eventually, as a movie maker, you want the movie to reach more people, right? So I'm really thankful to Bandra Film Festival for this opportunity, and it's amazing talking to you as a person. So we're expecting a very formal kind of interview. This was a very heart-to-heart talk, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to sleep with some nice memories.
So first of all, Nirav, lovely talking to you. It's been a pleasure. It's been a lovely chat, and yeah, thank you to Bandra Film Festival for showcasing the films. I think uh, we are living in times where not everything that you want to show is being shown in theaters and OTT and all of that. There are more laws and rules coming in, making it stringent, which means that creators won't stop. Creators will keep making content, comfortable or uncomfortable according to things, which increases the value that festivals such as these will have, in getting these films out. So I think it's a lovely initiative by Film Caravan and everyone who's involved.
Thank you so much. I'm thoroughly I'm thoroughly really happy just connecting with you, and thank you for allowing me to kind of get into your head, and understand what makes it tick. And as an artist, I respect your journey, and I love everything that you put into it. I could see the hard work that went into it. It often things seem like, "Arey, isme production nahi hai, ye nahi hai, wo nahi hai," but to set up a small shot in both your films, to set up a small shot intentionally and to frame it and compose it in small places, it's difficult to be in a kitchen while someone's making a burger, and then like, let me sneak in this shot or that shot. It still takes a lot of time, and you guys have created your own agency of flow of creativity, and I honor that, and thank you so much for spending time with me.